Tuesday, May 29th at 9:32 p.m. This is the first official episode of the Politicast. I'm Ryan, and with me are Nikita and Nick. Hello, Nikita and Nick. How are you doing?
Hey, how's it going, Ryan?
Hey, Ryan. How's it going? This is Nikita, by the way. That's who's speaking.
All right, it's going pretty well. So Nick and I did a few practice runs of this podcast a few weeks back, and we got a little bit more familiar with it. But this is the first time that Nikita is going to be joining us. And so why don't we start off with, Nick, how would you describe yourself politically? If you had to give a one-word label to your political philosophy, what label would you use?
Are we going with the Nick or Nikita right now? It's already getting confusing with the names.
Oh, that's true. I'll be sure to say Nikita if I mean Nikita. So let's go with Nick.
Okay, yeah. So that's definitely a question that I've been asked a good amount of times, and sometimes I have immediate answers, sometimes I don't. Sometimes I'll be like, oh, I'm centrist. Sometimes I'm full-on conservative, depending how much Hillary Clinton's pissed me off that week. But right now, I would say my leaning would mostly be libertarian.
Okay, all right, Nikita, what would you describe your political philosophy as?
I don't even know, honestly. I would say that most people would probably peg me as a liberal, but I definitely, throughout my years on this earth, have tempered that view a little bit. I think that I started out when I first started paying attention to politics and stuff. I definitely started out as an uber liberal, but I was also like 16, and who's not?
Sure.
But you know, now I'd definitely say a little bit more center in some ways, a little bit more liberal in some ways, and probably even a little bit more conservative in some ways. So I don't know.
Okay, all right. Well, I've always considered myself a liberal since probably 13 or 14, but I would usually say that I am a centrist liberal. There was a time when I was a progressive liberal, mainly in college and shortly after there when I was working with the Democratic Party. I definitely would have described myself as a progressive, although that partially was just a defense mechanism. So I came up with an idea on how we could flesh this out a little bit more. So I've got some litmus test questions. So what I'd like to do is have you guys fill in the blanks here. So we're not going to debate the things that we talk about here. It's just an idea to give anyone who listens to this an idea of where we stand politically, and it's supposed to be a little bit enjoyable here, possibly. So I've got a few statements, and I'd like you guys to fill in the blank. So the first one, why don't we start with Nick on this one? Fill in the blank with an adjective, Nick. Obama was a blank president.
I would say celebrity.
Celebrity? Okay, all right. Nikita, how would you fill that in with an adjective?
I would say decent.
I'm sorry, what?
Decent.
Decent. All right. Next one might be a little bit farther. I would say Obama was a deeply flawed president. The next question is, there are blank, and I need a quantity here. There are blank genders. Nikita, you can go first.
There are as many genders as you want there to be, so whatever.
All right. Nick, how would you fill that in?
Oof, two.
Two? I would say that there are at least three, and I would say probably just three, but I'm open to being convinced. All right, let's go to the next one here. Communism was a blank idea. We need an adjective. Either one, you can go.
Nikita, you go first.
All right, yeah. Singling out the Russian on the communism question, huh? I see how it goes. I would say what is it? Communism is a what?
Was a blank idea.
Communism was a deeply flawed idea. How about that?
All right. Nick?
I'd say manipulative.
Manipulative idea? All right. Darn it, we're agreeing more than I was hoping here. I would say
sorry to disappoint.
I would say communism was a deeply flawed idea in practice. Although the theory wasn't.
Oh, whoa! No! You can't go adding on stuff to.
Fair enough. That's an unfair
sentence.
I'll stick with deeply flawed. That's an unfair modifier. All right. Now some more fun ones. Free speech, a good right or the best right? Let's start with Nick.
I would say it's probably the best right.
Best right? Nick?
I'm thinking for a second. I would say the best right.
The best right? Okay. Damn it. We're all agreeing here. All right. Blank has or have a reason to own an AR-15. Nick, let's start with you.
Can you say it again?
Blank has or have a reason to own an AR-15.
Citizens.
Citizens. All right. Nikita?
I don't think I really understand the question. Like, do you what are we looking for? Like,
Who do you think
Well,
that someone has a right to own an AR-15, or everybody, nobody, selective people?
See, now I want to do that thing where you add stuff at the end of the sentence, like you just did.
Yeah, I can't do it.
There's a lot of caveats there. This is all very broad, but I guess that's kind of the point, right?
Yeah. So you'd say probably some people have a right to own an AR-15?
I think that everybody starts out with the right to own an AR-15.
All right. All right.
Dude, what type of liberal did you find, Ryan?
Hey, man. We work with what we got. All right. Well, I think some more stuff will flesh out in the issues here. So why don't we get into the very first article here? So we're going to talk about Trump and specifically the NFL player protests, the new policy coming out of the NFL, and some of his interesting comments, specifically the one that said players that don't stand for the national anthem possibly shouldn't be in the country. So
that was all people who don't stand for the national anthem.
was it for all? I think it was for just players, or was he actually saying for all?
He was talking to all people. Why would he be talking about just players?
Oh, okay.
Think about that.
I think we're probably going to need to look up the context of that, because I didn't even see the actual video.
Why would it matter if he's talking about if a player is nothing more than just an American citizen? So if he says players shouldn't be in this country, then it would be the same thing as saying all Americans shouldn't be in this country if they don't stand for the national anthem.
Let me read the quote to you guys.
That's not accurate at all, because you're specifically talking about one subset of people. You can't just expand that to other people, to everybody.
Hold on, let me give you the guys the context here. So he was being interviewed and by Fox and Friends co-host Brian Kilmeade. They were talking about the NFL's new policy that came out, and his quote was, "You have to stand proudly for the national anthem, or you shouldn't be playing. You shouldn't be there. Maybe you shouldn't be in the country."
Yeah, that to me is specific towards players.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like to me.
I completely disagree with that. Why would he be talking about specifically with players? So regular people that aren't NFL players aren't standing for the national anthem, they should be in the country, but NFL players shouldn't. I think he's talking about everybody.
No, well, he said you shouldn't be playing, and then period, you shouldn't be there, period. Maybe you shouldn't be in the country.
Yeah, I think he's talking about everyone.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I definitely think he's talking specifically about NFL players. Or
I don't get how that would make any sense. Why would he only want NFL players not in the country if they weren't standing for the national anthem?
No. This isn't about who he wants to stand.
Oh no, I think that's what he's directly implying.
I'm sure that he wants everyone to stand and thinks that everyone should stand, but in that specific situation, he's specifically talking about NFL players. Like maybe in his mind he is expanding it to everybody, but we can't read his mind. We have just his words to go off of.
I think that's what he was saying with his words.
Yeah, he might have been kind of signaling to his.
No, I get what you're saying, because if you were to read the sentence like a normal person, like I get what you're saying. but I think literally I think that's where his thoughts were. Like I think he was kind of.
Yeah,
sometimes when he talks, sometimes when he talks, he
yeah.
starts expanding without telling anybody he's expanding.
Yeah,
I would agree with that. With that, like, if you just with keeping in mind the way that Trump talks, that in his mind he probably like, oh, you know what? Why not? Everybody that doesn't stand should not be in the country. Like that wouldn't surprise me at all.
Well, and also, to be fair though, he followed up that comment with when they talked about the new policy from the NFL. Well, I think that's good, Trump told Fox News. I don't think people should be staying in locker rooms, but I still think that's good. So let's focus on the policy from the NFL here. Does anybody have a problem with it? Does anyone think it was wrong, that it violates an amendment, or is it something that's fine for the NFL to do?
I'm gonna let Nikita go first on this one, definitely.
I wouldn't necessarily say that it violates anybody's amendments. They are an employer after all. There are rules and regulations that you need to adhere to as an employer. I think it's a really shitty policy, but I don't think that it's necessarily a violation of their First Amendment rights or anything like that. I think that they're also in like enacting this policy just to pander to their largely conservative fan base, and also to escape Donald Trump's ire of his tweets. But I think that just having the national anthem be played in front of before sporting events in general is just kind of a dumb idea. So
Sure.
I think that none of this would have even happened if we just didn't do that.
Well, I mean, a few years ago we were paying them to stand for the national anthem. I don't think it was
Right,
even part of
exactly.
that.
Like this was literally just a policy that started in order to promote patriotism or whatever. So I just feel like it's very it's not as patriotic or whatever as it's supposed to be made out to seem.
Yeah. Nick, you down with that? You got something?
Yeah, I definitely have some thoughts. I mean, going like I know we did it all the way back in Little League, you know what I mean, and Pee Wee football. We always just did it. It wasn't it's nothing you really thought about.
Yeah.
But when it goes to the NFL, first of all, I can definitely see your point where it's like, oh, it's a violation of their rights. But at the same time, it was something that was directly hurting their viewership. And if my employer was saying what you're doing is hurting our profits and they made a policy so I wouldn't do that, I would have no leg to stand on to say, oh, well, you're violating my rights.
Yeah, that's an important point. Fundamentally, the NFL is a business. And really what they're denying the players here, they're not denying them the right to protest, the right to speak freely, right? They can go protest outside of the games.
Exactly.
What they're being
work,
what they're being denied is the platform to push their protest in front of the millions of NFL viewers who watch every game. And I think that's a completely fair thing for a company to do. If I were going around to my clients and spouting off about my political views, I think my company would have something to say about it, and I don't think they would be wrong to.
Oh no, we lose our jobs.
Yeah.
I think it's a little bit different though, because that's the kind of example that people generally use as like, oh well, I can't say whatever I want about politics on my job, like that would get me in trouble too, yada yada yada. But like that's like not really what was going on. Like the national anthem takes like 3 minutes or something to like sing, and it's like they're kneeling during it, and it's like literally like who gives a shit, like like if you don't agree with it, then you don't agree with them, and then you just ignore them. But like if you do agree with them, then you're like, okay, cool, like this dude's all in favor of me. And it's like yeah, you can protest by like not coming out of the locker room, but like it's like, yeah, sure, you can protest as long as you protest in silence, which is kind of a shitty thing to do. And yeah, I'm gonna end on that note.
Yeah, I don't know if it's well, the thing is, it's about
it's like you can protest as long as nobody knows that you're protesting. Basically, it's like yeah, like if you're staying in the locker room, you're probably protesting, but it's like all very like hush hush or whatever. And like yeah, you said it was affecting their viewership, but I really don't think that it was affecting it that much. And I would have to look up the numbers and stuff about it. But the NFL's been declining in viewership for a long time, just in general.
Well, I don't watch sports very much, so I wouldn't be. I've heard regularly, but to be fair, mostly from conservative sources, that the NFL's ratings have been plummeting, specifically since the protests started. And not even since Kaepernick's protest started 2 years ago, but specifically last year during the fall season.
Yeah, so actually, I think that this would be a good time to talk about Kaepernick's protest specifically, because, like, because he started out sitting during the anthem, and then he had, I forget what the name of it is, but he talked to him and Eric Reed were two guys that started out sitting on the 49ers, and then that created a hubbub, but like not really anywhere near as much as what last year's events did. But then he talked with one of his, I don't know if he's really like a friend or what, but like a Green Beret, and I can look up his name real quick, who was basically like, like sitting is pretty disrespectful, but I think that like if you kneel during it, then like that's a respectful way to protest during the anthem or whatever. Sure. And I think that that's, and I think that that's, like a lot of times that's something that's severely overlooked amongst people on the right who are like, oh, this is so unpatriotic or whatever. And it's like, well, disrespecting our troops or whatever. And it's like, well, a troop like told him to do it. So,
well, Nick, here's a question for you, Nick. So I'm assuming that you weren't a fan of the NFL protest. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but if that is true and you weren't a fan of it, was it because of the disrespect to the national anthem or the flag, or was it because of the intrusion of politics into what is traditionally a non-political event in the country and sort of a unifying event in the country? Or maybe I'm wrong and you didn't approve of it.
You're not. Yeah. See, I would say you're right on both of them. I thought when it first started happening, I was upset for two reasons. First, because I thought it was absurdly disrespectful to kneel during the national anthem. You just don't do that unless, I mean, if you're doing that, you're sending. I think that's a really strong message you're sending. It's like basically like I want no part of this country. Like and I mean, even if that's not the intent, like I feel like that's something you do like for like a rebellion group in like a third world country. Like you know what I mean? Like it's nothing was that bad. And if Kaepernick was really that upset about systematic racism, then he could have addressed it easily outside of work. And so but even okay, so even without like my political views aside, like yeah, I was really pissed off and insulted. Like when he not, I guess I wasn't personally insulted, but I was just like, wow, that's so disrespectful. I wish he wasn't doing that. And then I was annoyed. Also, I was also annoyed because now for something that I love watch on Sundays, I literally am like, screw work, like screw all stress. I'm like, let me just sit and watch football and stare at my fantasy football team. And Ryan, I know you don't watch football that much. They would talk about the national anthem protest every single game. And during before the game started, they would zoom in to like go down the line to see which players were like were standing and which one were sitting. It was basically like a play-by-play for who was protesting the anthem. And it wasn't like it was just one day or one game. It was every single game for the entire year. And then after the games were over, like especially like on ESPN, it's not like they would just say this is what happened with the game. They would literally do a play-by-play of who stood and who kneeled for the national anthem. And I was just like, this is not what I'm watching this for. Like I vehemently disagree with what they're doing. I think that their boss should be able to tell them not to do that. But at the time, their boss was not telling them not to do that. So we can't. I mean, I wouldn't say the government should be like, oh, that's illegal, because that's literally tyranny. Like, if they want to do that, they can do that, especially if their boss isn't telling them to. But like, just my point of, I was like, wow, like this is really, really like sucking the energy out of me and taking away something that so many people just enjoy because it's just stupid and fun and stress free to watch.
Well, and so one of the things that I would point out is that part of protesting is to get people's attention, to put your protest in front of people who wouldn't normally be thinking about it, right? That's part of the whole point about protesting. To be honest, though, at this point, it's been 2 years of this. A huge year last year about it. Like you were saying, apparently it was a rundown of who was standing and who was kneeling. It was a divisive issue in which people either had to take sides, they either knelt with their teammates, or they stood with other sections of teammates, or some of them did them as whole teams. The fact of the matter is, I'm not sure how much exposure to the issue. It was specifically relating to police violence at first, and then was kind of expanded to systemic racism. I'm not sure how much more exposure they would get for those issues by continuing this for a third season. I think the NFL clarifying the rules on this and laying out, I mean, this is a rule that the NBA has had for, I think 20 years now. So I think
the rules, you have to, in the NBA, you stand for the national anthem. And
really?
It.
Oh, wow. Okay. So it's even more lax rule than the NBA's, but I think they probably reached the effectiveness of their protest. And so I think this was a good time for the NFL to make a final ruling on it, clarify the situation for the players, and to move on. I think Donald Trump's clearly signaling to parts of his voter base through this entire issue, and it's an electoral sort of thing. But I'd like to move on. Nikki, do you have any final statements on that, or before we move on?
Yeah, I mean, I agree that you know, in year 3, it's definitely going to be like watered down, and not, you know, nobody's really going to care about it anywhere as much. But I think that you know, I think that the players on their part did a really good job of always, you know, being like look, like, I'm not protesting the anthem, I'm not protesting the you know, troops or whatever. Like, I'm literally just like doing this in order to try and bring more attention to this issue that I care about. And I think that you know, a lot of the blame has to go on I this is gonna sound very I guess aggressive, but like on like right wing media for like completely ignoring that, you know, and like continuing to push the narrative that they're doing this in order to be like fuck America, fuck the troops, like, you know, all that stuff. When they were always all very vocal about like, no, this isn't what I'm doing, like, this is not why I'm doing this, like, I'm doing this for a very specific reason, and everything and all the reasons that you guys say I'm doing this for are not the reasons.
Yeah.
But,
I think, well, there was definitely nuance lost on both sides when it came to the media.
Yeah.
Anytime something becomes a political issue, that, you know, is a
yeah,
what they call a wedge issue, anytime you get a political wedge issue, the whole point of a wedge issue is to force voters to be on one side or the other. And when you do that, nuance goes out the window immediately.
Yeah.
But all right, let's go on to our next topic here. I just sent you guys a picture. I'm just going to
like through text or
through text message. So if you guys can text or check your text messages on your phone.
Okay, I just got it.
I'd like to know if either of you know who that woman is.
Yeah, that's that Obama aide that what's her face just got fired for insulting or whatever.
Oh, okay. So you do know. All right. So Nick, had you seen Valerie Jarrett before?
No, I'm not gonna. I had no idea who she was.
Yeah. So I've known of Valerie Jarrett. I haven't been very familiar with her work up until today, though. I had no idea that she was black.
Yeah.
And specifically, she was born in Iran. She does not appear. She appears to be passing white or perhaps some Mediterranean region. And that, I think, puts an interesting context on what happened with Roseanne today. So if you haven't heard the news yet, Roseanne tweeted out a interesting piece, an interesting tweet to say the least. It was in response to another tweet. Someone was talking about a conspiracy theory about Trump being spied on, and it was Obama and Valerie Jarrett who were behind the spying in his campaign. And Roseanne Barr responded to this tweet by saying, what was it? The Muslim Brotherhood. If the Muslim Brotherhood and the Planet of the Apes had a baby, it would be Valerie Jarrett. So first off, why don't we start off by saying, is that racist? Was that a racist tweet? Definitively.
Don't make me start on that.
I honestly don't know what the fuck kind of tweet that was, to be honest with you. Like, I don't know. I think generally you should stay away from referring to anybody who's, not like blatantly white as an ape, generally just because of the historical context. And Roseanne Barr, and it's also not like Roseanne Barr doesn't have a pretty distinct history of being pretty racist. Like,
does she?
Yeah. If you want, I'll.
Well, I'm not saying you're lying. I specifically don't know much about Roseanne because I'm under 30.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, I never did either, but
what?
But like, just from stuff going on today, it was like, yep, like she's pretty much always been racist, blah blah blah. But honestly, and like I know. And so I don't know, Muslim Brotherhood and Planet of the Apes had a baby equals VJ, and then I think Bill Mitchell, who, I personally think is a complete fucking crackpot, but he somebody tweeted out something that was basically a picture of the old Planet of the Apes movie next to Valerie Jarrett's face, like a side by side, and he was like, oh yeah, they totally don't look alike.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. But what struck me when I texted you guys this earlier today, I followed it up with the comment that, what did I say? I thought she was drunk. It made no sense to me. That tweet, it doesn't make sense in context. It doesn't even really make sense as a racist tweet, right?
No, that's what I like. From my first comment, I said I had no idea what tweet this even is. Basically, like, what is she even getting at? Like she could be getting at the fact, like she looks like one of the people from Planet of the Apes, which, if you're looking just like on a facial, like side by side comparison, like I guess you could make that assumption, but like she could also be like she's a fucking monkey, like like there's all sorts of ways to interpret it.
Well, it's also notable that she used a reference to the movie The Planet of the Apes, right? And so it's been a while since I've seen The Planet of the Apes, but I did a quick refresher on it. If you're not familiar with the movie, we're not talking about the new movies. We're talking about the old 1970s movie. A man is shot to apparently a distant place, shot through a black hole, goes to a distant planet, and it turns out that monkeys have taken over the society, and it was a society where it was run by monkeys, and the humans were enslaved. And the
monkeys really doing this right now?
Oh yeah. Hold on, I've got a point to this. I'm gonna bring it back to it. So the monkeys had created an authoritarian government in which there were rigid. It was basically like monkey communism. So you combine that with the reference to the Muslim Brotherhood, which is a well-known Islamicist group. And when I say Islamicist, I don't mean terrorists. They're not terrorists, but they are a group that believes in promoting Islam through governmental means. So getting elected to governmental positions and then enforcing Muslim doctrine in the law nationally. So that the term Islamist qualifies. And if you have been paying attention as I have to some of the more paranoid conspiracies on the right wing, people like Alex Jones, things like that, it's not uncommon to hear Valerie Jarrett's name as the person who was running Obama, the person who was behind Obama, the reason that Obama was successful, the reason that he got into office. It's often attributed to Valerie Jarrett, who has a history in community organizing and things like that. So if you take those two things together, I think it's definitely possible that Roseanne may not even have known that Valerie Jarrett was black to begin with, or non-white, considering she's obviously white passing, based off of how she presents. And you combine those two things, and it sounds very similar to kind of a fringe, weird conspiracy theory that you'd find in the Alex Jones circles, that Obama was a secret Muslim and that
Yeah,
he was trying to, he
which
was a communist, and yeah.
right, yeah. So maybe, and so like maybe if the planet, but at the same time, it's like why choose Planet of the Apes as your movie about like authoritarianism or whatever when there's plenty of other movies to choose from. And it could be again just calling to the fact that like they might look similar like in the old movies, when makeup wasn't that good and the monkeys didn't actually look like monkeys, like they look like like they had looked like humans with like monkey features. And like
Sure.
I might get myself in trouble here, but like there are, everybody, like lots of humans have features that resemble animals. Like there are people that look
Well, we're
like
all
fucking
monkeys. I
frogs
mean,
and like horses and like and
we're literally all
basically,
primates,
I wouldn't, and I would agree too that she probably didn't really know that Valerie Jarrett was black or black passing or whatever. But that Muslim Brotherhood part is still. So I think if anything, I would say that the Muslim Brotherhood part is more racist than the Planet of the Apes part.
Well, so that's interesting because right after she tweeted that, people started berating her and saying, this is racist. What are you doing? And her first tweet wasn't in response to the Planet of the Apes comment. It was in response to the Muslim Brotherhood comment. And she very quickly said something along the lines of, "You idiots, Muslim isn't a race. Muslim includes all of people."
Yeah, she definitely didn't know she was black.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that makes me think that she possibly was saying something weird. I mean, this is a boomer on Twitter, right? They all say
Yeah.
stupid shit. But that specifically, that response makes me think that she was clueless to what she was saying. And the reason why I'm going into detail about whether or not she was actually racist at this tweet or whether there was racist intent behind it is because every single article that I've seen come out, and I've got up on the screen right now, you guys can't see this, but up on the podcast screen, we've got an article from the New York Times, which her headline, the headline for this article is "Roseanne Barr incites fury with racist tweet and her show is canceled by ABC." There is no
Right.
suspected racist tweet or alleged racist tweet or possibly racist tweet. It is a racist tweet. And it later goes on to talk about how she has compared Valerie Jarrett to an ape, which is not actually true based off of the tweet itself. Now you can say in
No, I would
context,
definitely think that is
possibly.
still true. But I think that she definitely did mean to compare her to an ape, at least from the Planet of the Apes movies. But
Well, but I mean, I could see
what's
your
interesting though
point,
is like
but
that New York Times article does say racist tweet, but there's also a slew of other outlets out there that don't say racist; they say racially charged. Um,
Oh, okay.
possibly I haven't
which
seen those,
I would,
but
huh?
I haven't seen those, but specifically the New York Times. This is the one that really pisses me off. There's no question about it. There's another one about the person who ended up canceling the show for Roseanne Barr, a new CEO at ABC, who basically made this her. They said she made history by canceling Roseanne's show. Made history. I mean,
Yeah, definitely. I definitely don't think that much, but I mean, also as we've seen throughout times, like New York or throughout the past couple of years, like the New York Times doesn't always post the highest quality articles, and I'm not talking about like fake news or anything like that, but just like shitty op-eds and stuff like that.
but Nikita,
But
the New York Times is the standard for journalism.
yeah, I mean, they definitely have a reputation to uphold, and sometimes they fall flat on their face when it comes to that. But I
I think
still
the
like,
reputation
I
is
still
top.
don't really have, I don't really have as much of a problem with the specifically saying that it is a racist tweet, because again, that Muslim Brotherhood to me means like oh, she's from Iran and she's part of the Muslim Brotherhood. Like it's the same type of shit that happened with Obama and people calling him a Muslim, whatever.
Well,
But
I could see how you could
and
interpret
like
that
yes,
way.
like yeah, you idiots, like Islam isn't a race, it's a group of people that abide to a certain um ideology or whatever. But like when X% of those people are from a specific part of the country or a specific part of the world, it's like, yeah, yeah, like that's
Yeah,
it's kind of racist.
there could be a dog whistle there, but again, that's your
Yeah.
interpretation of it, and it's an interpretation that I'm not totally opposed to. And look, I'm not going to defend this dumb boomer.
Yeah, exactly. And with a tweet like this, what if we're going to talk about Roseanne Barr tweets? I think a more interesting one to talk about. I mean, this is a tweet with what, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 words, and half of those words aren't actual words. Like, like it's hard to pull in a lot of meaning behind it. It's like, on its surface, it could seem racist. When you dig down a little bit, maybe it's just Islamophobic. Like,
Yeah.
but regardless, it's something bigoted of some sort.
Well, I don't think criticizing the Muslim Brotherhood is a bigoted action. There's a lot.
No, I
a lot to be
don't think
concerned
I don't think. But she's not criticizing the Muslim Brotherhood here. She's saying that VJ
she's
is,
talking. She's
a
talking about
child
a
of the
person
Muslim
who
Brotherhood.
looks. Yeah.
Wait, no,
Yeah.
we don't. Hold on, we don't know if she's talking about the looks. It could be that she's talking about ideology. She could be comparing an authoritarian government with a specific focus on Islam. That's not
Right, but
So-
again,
No,
why
hold on.
specifically Muslims then? Like, there's plenty of authoritarian ideologies. Like, she could call her a communist or any other like amount of authoritarian.
maybe. Nick, why don't you jump in here? We
Ideologies.
haven't heard from you.
Yeah. I haven't said a lot on this yet. So okay, so you guys made a lot of good points. I mean, first of all, like you said, there's why defend her. You're absolutely right. Why would I do that? Like, why would you stick your neck out for someone like that when you know what I mean? She could. It's not like this is the first crazy thing she said. But I do see what you're saying about how it could be just politically charged and not racially charged, because she could be comparing the politics of Planet of the Apes to the politics of the Muslim Brotherhood. But I don't know. You got to be smarter than that. You really just have to be smarter than that. And
Oh, absolutely.
it's it was just annoying as someone who has become more and more, I guess, right leaning because of how much I hate the media and the TV shows right now that are all so left leaning. Like, of course, I had no interest in actually watching this show, but it was just refreshing to know that like there was a clearly biased show on television that was biased right wing. Like, it's literally the only one. And
Was
again,
it
I had
was
no
it
interest in
biased right
watching it.
wing?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it definitely was.
Oh,
Yeah.
really? Okay, I
Yeah,
don't.
but I thought that was
Actually-
hilarious. Just because I knew how many people it would piss off.
Oh,
And
yeah.
like every other show you watch on TV is left leaning, and that's I don't care. That's not my problem. If that's how they want to make money, that everyone has their own rights to do so. But I just really enjoyed the fact that there at least was. I knew there was one show that would piss off liberals and was right leaning, and the fact that like she didn't have someone read that tweet and be like, oh, like Roseanne, like I don't know if you're meaning to say it, but you're saying that you think a black person looks like a Muslim monkey. Like,
Yeah.
Well, and here's
like,
the thing: that show will be
there was
fine. It
no-
got as soon as ABC canceled the show, like an hour or
picked it
two
up.
later, Fox picked it up for 3
Fox
more
picked it up.
seasons.
but
Did
okay,
they
so
really?
yeah, they did.
Yeah.
So my next point on that would be, yeah, she shouldn't. Okay, so she shouldn't have said that. That was so stupid. But I am totally not for like.
Wait, hold on. Can
Canceling-
you guys explain to me where I literally just Googled Fox Roseanne and there's
I saw
nothing
it on Twitter, man. So my news is always iffy because most of it's from.
Okay, yeah,
from
because
Twitter.
I don't see anything that talk about her picking up them picking up the show.
Oh, I'm pretty sure that did happen. That's what I said. Unless it was someone being like satirical.
Wait, hold on.
Ryan.
But-
clearly
Yeah,
Well,
and
yeah,
I saw it
it
from a
might
separate
be-
source, so I don't have the article on hand, but I do believe I've seen it in 2 places now in different sources. so.
I mean, I can try a more refined search, but I feel like Fox Roseanne would immediately come up with that. But the number 3rd article, when I search for Fox Roseanne, it's actually pretty funny. It says Charlie Sheen calls for 2.5 Men revival following Roseanne cancellation.
Jesus,
That's what the world needs.
look at these cutthroat old boomers going for trying to get any relevance they can.
Oh God, that's hilarious.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, and
All
so,
right. Do you
Go
want to maybe move on from this? Maybe a couple more statements, then move on from this. I mean, this is. I
Well-
don't feel like we're saving the world right now with this
Yeah,
conversation.
well, no, I
It's
did.
like- but-
I did this in a way because I think it leads very well into the next topic, right? The real
Hold
problem.
on.
here-
Before we move
go
on
ahead.
real quick, like I said, I want to. There's another couple tweets from her that I think that are probably, worse than the
Worse.
Go for
Well,
it.
I don't know. I don't want to quantify it as.
Are
like,
you talking about the
what's better or worse,
Soros tweet?
but- Yeah,
Chelsea
like,
Soros Clinton.
Yeah. Chelsea Soros Clinton, and then like when she responded to it, and she was like, "What did she say?" Sorry to have tweeted incorrect info about you. Please forgive me. By the way, George Soros is a Nazi who turned in his fellow Jews to be murdered in German concentration camps and stole their wealth. Were you aware of that? Like, oh my God.
Yeah,
George
that's
Soros is the infinite boogeyman, and it's like, Jesus Christ. Like,
well. I'm not sure if that qualifies as race. George Soros definitely does have.
I don't think. I mean, I wouldn't say that it necessarily qualifies as racist, but it's definitely like a little bit like,
problematic.
well, I mean, yeah, problematic conspiracy theorism, like maybe anti-Semitic, whatever you want to call it.
Well, I did
Which,
kind of.
like, I know Roseanne is Jewish or something, right? So whatever.
Well, I did kind of want to talk with you, Nikita, about this specifically. Do you think there's a difference in the way that the right regards George Soros and the way that the left regards the Koch family?
Oh, absolutely. I mean,
Really?
yeah, I definitely do. I mean, obviously the left and I don't know. Do you guys ever listen to Freakonomics podcast?
Yeah.
Yes.
So Stephen Pickard did. Or wait, I'm sorry, not Stephen Pickard. Is that
Stephen
his name?
Levitt. Stephen
Whatever.
Levitt.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the guy that does the Freakonomics radio podcast. He he actually had like a 2-part interview with one of I think it was Charles Koch. Um, and his whole thing was like you would actually be surprised to see like how much he would agree with the Koch brothers like on this like on these like certain issues or whatever. And like I listened to it and I was like, damn, like that actually, like those seem like some pretty liberal like viewpoints or whatever. But then, when when you turn around and look at what the stuff that his like or that the foundation is doing, it seems like mainly giving money to right wing stuff and everything like that. But that's besides the point.
Well, no. I think that's a good point, but you can't deny that, especially during the Obama presidency, during the 2011, right after Citizens United, through about 2014, the boogeyman for the Democratic Party was Charles Koch.
Yeah, I definitely,
agreed.
I would definitely agree with that, but I don't think that it was adopted with the same like fervor, I guess would be a good word, as the right's like hatred or conspiracy theories about George Soros. Like, and this might just be me from like not having personal experience with it, from not being, in crazy conspiracy theory circles. But like for me, like for example, like I see often, like, oh, these protesters or whatever are paid by Soros, like the Parkland students are all paid by Soros, like crisis actors paid by Soros, whatever. Whereas like I don't really see as much of that going on within the left towards the Koch brothers. Like towards the Koch brothers, the left attitude I would say is more along the lines of like they're funding all these like politicians and trying to influence politics with their money. But I like not the same like ground level conspiracy like George Soros is the reason for all evil like type of thing. But
Well,
but again, I could be wrong. That's just my personal experience.
well, and I think it gets really muddled, especially with Soros on the right, because while there are many valid criticisms of Soros and things like the Frankfurt School and the rise of critical theory that came out of the Frankfurt School, all of which have very valid critiques to be made about them. The fact is that there is a section of the right that is obsessed with anyone who is Jewish, and this is specifically the very far right, the alt right,
Yeah,
the people who would verge on being going into Nazi territory.
yeah.
There is a freak obsession with anyone who has power and is Jewish. And so I think that muddies the water very much. But I think if you look at mainstream conservatives and mainstream liberals, the comparison between George Soros and Charles Koch are very similar. But Nick, anything to wrap up there before we move on, or?
No, man, I'm ready to move on from this.
All right, sounds good. So the reason that I brought this up, and specifically it was the New York Times article that really pissed me off, the fact that they're just reporting it as racist tweet, right? And all these verified journalists talking about racist tweet as opposed to alleged, or some of the the language you put in there to avoid committing libel or slander. And so if we look at that in the perspective, if we take that into account, let's talk about Elon Musk and his new idea for, is it Pravda? It's
Pravda.
Pravda.
Pravda. Yeah, that's it literally means truth in Russian, and it's also a newspaper that used to be prevalent in the Soviet Union when
Wasn't it
everything was run.
the Soviet Union's official newspaper or outlet?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I thought, a lot of people pointed out that he was kind of poking fun at journalists with that name. and sort of trolling
Yeah, I
them.
definitely think that he was like it was kind of like a tongue-in-cheek kind of thing, but like also like definitely a bad look to try and call it Pravda. And I also think it's a really dumb idea to try and create this sort of thing that he was talking about, where like, oh, like we're all gonna rate news sources, and it's like,
Ooh, really? Okay, interesting. Nick, what do you think? Are you for it? You against it? What do you think?
me personally.
No, Nick. Sorry,
Oh,
Nick, you there?
oh, sorry.
Uh-oh. Did we lose?
Did we lose him?
Uh-oh. Nick, you might have to restart Discord real quick.
Oh yeah.
Okay, he hopped out. All right, we'll continue while he's gone here. So,
oh, here we go.
hey,
Can you hear me?
we
Hey,
can
what's
hear
up,
you
guys?
now. How's it going?
Good. Now I just got to get my back on my thoughts. Okay. So yeah, I mean, Elon Musk. So what was cool about this for me, just the whole thing in general, is I'm as someone again who's more right leaning. Elon Musk is kind of a champion for a lot of young young liberals, just because he's so into saving the environment while also kind of not throwing. I guess he is throwing it in your face a little bit, but he doesn't really talk as much about saving the environment as much as just kind of this change to solar and electric powered vehicles, and obviously the effects that that'll have. And whenever someone who is a champion of the left in any way, even if it wasn't by their choice, is attacked by the left, I just find it the most amusing thing, and I love it. And there's nothing better than just following it on Twitter and having him argue with these media sources. And the media, like at least in this situation, like it was just so dumb. It's like, just leave him alone. Like, I'm like, even if he is not identifying as liberally as you'd like him to, there are so many college students that love Elon Musk. He's like their king, and these are all left-leaning individuals. And like, by attacking him, you're just making more people hate the media that originally did it. And for him talking about this, what was the website called again?
Pravda.
Pravda, yeah. I think he said that total.
Oh, hello.
God damn it.
Did we lose him again?
Looks like it.
Darn it. All right, well, we're waiting for him to come back in. Nikki, so you're concerned about creating a website like this where people are rating journalists.
Discord's starting to piss me off a little bit with this.
Time.
Oh, there we go.
No, I wasn't. I
Okay.
saw that I was lost. Yeah, Discord. I don't know what the problem is right now, but
Okay.
whatever. Okay, so my thought was that if him actually buying this website, I thought was absolutely hilarious. Like, the fact that he literally bought a website and was like, I'm gonna start ranking media outlets. I don't know why that pissed everybody off so much. Like, I don't understand why we care if he does that or not, especially if it's a joke. And I don't know. I feel like maybe you guys feel this way too. People are like, oh, like this is like setting a bad precedent on something to do, like trying to like discredit media sources. But like, I don't know, who cares?
Well, before I
It's
toss
just
it over to
funny.
Nikita, it's actually not a joke. So he had registered. Someone put up.
He registered a website. Yeah, he bought a website.
Well, he registered the name and the trademark apparently months ago. So back last year, actually, before this little tweet storm. So this is obviously something that he's had in the works, and it makes me think that this isn't just a troll effort. This is actually something that he's seriously looking at. So what?
Oh no, I think this is flexing muscles. I think this is literally a troll effort. I think it's just such an elaborate one, and something that you could only do if you were like a Tony Stark, but in real life.
Oh, so you don't think
think
this is
that's
actually
what
going to
he's
happen,
doing.
Nick? You don't think he's actually going to do this?
Oh no, I think he will do it, but I think it's a joke.
Oh, okay, all right.
I think that even
he's
if
trolling
he
them.
does end up actually doing it, like it'll be like one of his little like side projects that like nobody really pays attention to.
Yeah.
He doesn't really put a lot of effort to. Like,
No, I don't think this
it's
is
just
going to be
like a
something we
joke.
use for like the next 10 years. I think it'll be
Yeah.
hilarious for a month, and then it'll go away.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to drive the media crazy, and I think they'll be talking about it long after we stop talking about it.
Yeah. But,
Well,
but
yeah,
my
Nikita,
initial
what's
like biggest problem with that tweet though was
Go
just
for
that like all this pretty much already exists. You know, like PolitiFact has their like truthometer or whatever. Like Snopes exists. Like, you know, like there's all these like fact checking like websites and everything like that you know actually like do it. So basically, what he was suggesting is just like have it based like on a community that rates things instead of like actually rating things based on their like factsness or not, you know, like which to me was like that's a really dumb idea, Elon, because botnets exist for a fucking reason. So
Well, hold on.
you know,
He talks about controlling botnets, but specifically PolitiFact lies all the time. PolitiFact is not a reliable source. They are.
I agree. I think that a lot of these fact checkers are mostly left leaning. Again, that's okay. They have that right to be, but
well,
there's no
well,
true
see, well,
there's no true
here's the thing.
fact checker.
Here's the flaw in saying that, if they're left leaning doesn't mean that they're not factual. Like there is a possibility that
Yes, it does,
left.
because you can have bias.
Well,
All
well,
facts
no,
can have
no,
bias.
no, no,
All facts
no.
you present can absolutely have bias.
well, hold on.
Yeah,
I'll give you guys an example of what I mean, because I'm not specifically saying they're left leaning, even though they are left leaning. But the reason that I say they're not a trustworthy source, if you look back, a great example, and I think Nikita, you and I might have talked about this when it happened during the 2016 presidential election. They did an excellent PolitiFact did an excellent piece that, well, not excellent, a terrible piece, but it was an excellent example of this, in which they said Hillary Clinton is the candidate who has lied the least in the 2016 presidential election, or ever, or something like it was some crazy claim like that. And then if you looked at that, the reason that they did that is because they aggregated statements from politicians into very true, sort of true, unclear if it's true, and then not true, and pants on fire lie is what I think their final rating is there.
Yeah, liar, pants on fire.
Yeah, and so what they did is they only counted things that were sort of not true and pants on fire as lies, which means that all of the statements that Hillary Clinton made that were half truths or things that we would call lies straight up allowed them to publish an article saying, "Hey, look, Hillary Clinton's the most honest candidate in the campaign." So that's the kind of dishonesty that I'm saying, and that I'm pointing out.
I might have to look up that article, because I feel like it might not have come from PolitiFact or whatever, but it seemed like, if I remember correctly, that like Bernie Sanders was the one that had the least like untruths or whatever. But I mean, I literally just use PolitiFact as an example. Be a bad one. I don't give a shit about them. I don't read that stuff.
Well, but what's the problem with the idea of having a crowdsourced? If you let's say you can prevent botnets, you can identify and prevent botnets, and tampering with the system in various ways, and there are methods to do that. What is the problem with crowdsourcing ratings for journalism? Do you have a problem with that?
No, I mean, if everybody that's part of the crowd is as dedicated to finding out the actual truth.
Well, I mean, it's like Wikipedia.
Yeah, there's
Wikipedia
no problem with that. But that's not going to happen, and people are going to use their own biases to vote stuff that makes them feel better about themselves. And you might.
I feel like that's what we all do now, anyway.
Stuff like that, huh?
What's the difference between that and what's done right now? What's the difference between you take 1,000 people and everyone just kind of up or down votes something based on their bias versus what the media is presenting now?
Right, exactly. There is none. So the whole concept of what Elon's talking about just seems useless to me. Like it just doesn't seem like a good use of his time or of anyone else's time. Like it just.
I think he literally has the time and resources as extra, and is just kind of doing it as a joke. But
hold on.
And I completely get that.
It's a good idea. So I think it's a good idea. I think it's funny and will send the message. And the reason he's very clear why he's doing this, because there's been a lot of hit pieces before he even got into this argument. They were coming after Tesla for God knows. Again, I have no idea why. Tesla is so on mission for them, and so many Elon Musk fans are Democratic voters and going to be future Democratic voters. I have no idea why they did this, but there were so many articles that were targeting, especially his car manufacturing, because on stupid shit, because they knew it would sell. Like the one example was. They had the first accident recorded in a Tesla that was on autopilot, and basically the autopilot got cut off by a tractor trailer, and it hit the back of the tractor trailer going 65 miles an hour. And it was huge, and the media made it huge news. And then Elon was like pissed. He tweeted about it and was like, he's like, the guy who got in the accident broke his ankle. He got in a 65 mile an hour car accident on the highway, and all he did was break his ankle. And it's front page news. He's like, car accidents happen every single day, and why are they attacking me? And I get why they're doing it. It was because this autopilot is of the future, and it's so celebrated, novel, and being able to throw it under the bus and it is popular. I mean, it's something that grabs your attention way more than a regular car accident. but
Yeah.
that's why he felt personally attacked.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with all that. I think he had every reason to be pissed off at like media and journalists and everything. For specifically that reason is that they harp on any little thing that goes wrong with Teslas, and they're like, look at how awful Teslas are, and it's like no, like it's like yeah, this dude got into a car accident. A billion people get into a car accident like every day using their own two hands and feet. Like
Yeah.
like autopilot got into a car accident. Okay, like it's not the most perfect system ever, but like it's
It's
still
it's better than it's better
better.
than
Like yeah,
us. It's better than us, right?
yeah, exactly.
That's
And
the whole
so
point.
Well,
I absolutely get his frustration. I think that tweet was and like and I agree that he is definitely completely joking. And I think that the reaction to those tweets and the vitriol towards him, and constantly like publishing pieces about like, oh, Tesla's autopilot did this, Tesla's autopilot did that, and it's like, why don't you guys report about every single like person that gets into a or an accident of their own volition, like without a computer. Like
Yeah, I completely yeah, exactly.
people are super
well,
capable of doing that. But that's also kind of like that comes with the territory of like groundbreaking technology, though, is that like I feel like for pretty much every new thing that becomes like the latest and greatest and like pushing boundaries and everything like that, there's always going to be some sort of negativity that's like, no, this isn't better than the way things are now. And I'm gonna lean into the microphone and whisper real quick, but big oil and gas.
well, so here we're coming to the end of our time here, but I've got some thoughts on the media issue here. So I think Elon is trying to address. I don't think this is a joke. I think this is something that he's seriously going to do, and I think it would be a good thing if he did it, and I think it would be a good thing if more than just him did. I think there should be competitors in this space. That doesn't mean there aren't problems with the idea. If you look at the invention of things like Metacritic in the video games industry, the invention of Metacritic actually changed the way that developers created games and how they promoted games and how things went around with that, because they were absolutely laser focused in on improving their Metacritic score. And you can argue that that was detrimental to the actual product they were producing. So it's not that I don't see that there are any potential problems with crowdsourcing reviews of specifically individual journalists and news outlets, because it's going to be both of those. It's not just news outlets as a whole. And there's lots of people who are doing that. To my knowledge, there's nobody who's keeping a running tally of the problems with individual journalists. And I think that's a serious flaw in our system of how we're distributing information in this country. We are in a brand new unexplored territory, right? We just sort of got a handle by the time that the 60s and 70s were rolling around. We just started to get a handle on how to appropriately manage mass distribution of print information. And immediately after we did that, we got hit with the internet, which is something that nobody saw coming. And now what was stuck inside of an institution, right? The what do they call it? The fourth estate, the press itself, which is basically part of our government, but not part of the government, right? It's a separate, but it's a pillar of what makes American society what it is the way that we distribute information. We try and do it in an unbiased way, even though it's not possible to be completely unbiased. The goal traditionally with journalism has been to strive for as unbiased as possible. And we had a working system. And in the past 10 to 15 years, it's no longer working because now anyone can do it. And we've seen publications, specifically print publications, losing money left and right. If you're interested in this, to the people who are listening, there's a journalist on YouTube called Tim Pool who has done excellent work in describing the systemic problems with journalism in the modern era, right? New York Times, Washington Post, all of these great papers that, once we're doing groundbreaking investigative journalism, cannot afford to have a full-time investigative journalism team anymore. It doesn't make financial sense to do something like that because you're not selling the same ads that you were when the paper was going out in, even the 1980s. You're not selling the same space, the same columns, things like that. And so the revenue isn't there to support that, which means it needs to be independently invested in by stakeholders, things like that. And it doesn't make economic sense, considering the whole point of investigative journalism is that it may come up with nothing. You're investigating something to see if there's a problem there. And at the end of a year-long investigation, you might come up with an article that says, nope, everything's good here. And that doesn't sell papers. That doesn't, you can't put that on the front page. So there's a systemic problem with the fact that news is now driven by clicks. What they do is they sell advertising space for websites specifically. They sell it up front, and they say, "Pay us now. We'll put your we'll put your ads into our website, into our newsletter, into our YouTube videos, whatever it may be. We'll put your ads in, and we guarantee you that you will receive X number of views over the course of a month for advertising it with us at this certain dollar amount." So what happens if it comes to the end of the month? Let's say we got 5 days left. It's like a police officer giving tickets, right? You got a quota.
Hit your quota.
You come to the end of the month and you don't have the promised amount that the company fronted you. You don't have the clicks to back up what you sold them. What do journalists do? Time and time again, if you look at the end of the month, and I'd like to do an actual data analysis of this. If we could get like some Python code to, or crawl a database of news articles, this would be really interesting. But you get towards the end of the month and you start getting these crazy articles from left field, things like what it's like when Elon Musk's Twitter mobs come after you, right? And all of these things that are meant to generate clicks. They're often false. They contain false information that will then be retracted or completely deleted after the end of the month, after they've already gotten those clicks. But they focus on generating the controversy, whether it's true or false, so that they can get the traffic to the website and fulfill their obligation to their sponsors and advertisers. And it doesn't matter if it's true, it doesn't matter if it's false, they can correct it later. But the fact of the matter is, once you've read an article, you don't go back to it a week later to see if there's been any changes made to it. Oftentimes, they'll make changes to the articles and they won't even publicize at the top that any changes were made. So you have no indication if you read the article a day before and they changed 3 paragraphs. If you come back the next day, unless you actually read through the entire article again, you'd have no idea that a correction was made. This is a systemic flaw in our institution of journalism, and it's a huge problem, and it's not something that's going to go away lightly. So that's my little rant for this. We're at the end of our time, but I just want to give you guys a second or two if you want to give any final thoughts before we wrap up here.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with their systemic issues with journalism. Like you said, ads and clickbait articles, and then if you don't want to be part of that system, you have to get people to subscribe to you, and that means giving up X amount of dollars per month for news, which I'm personally fine with, but a lot of people aren't, especially because it's kind of a newer way of doing news when people generally just got that shit delivered to their doorstep every morning. But
yeah
so I agree with you for the most part there. Just the only other thing that I really want to add is that this organization called Media Matters for America that does do a lot of that whole, I wouldn't necessarily say fact checking or anything like that, but they do like analysis of journalists and organizations, journalistic organizations, like their articles, and they'll post updates about like so and so did a correction for this piece, like here's what so and so said at this point, and then like this is how it's conflicting with what they've said previously, like journalists and stuff like that. So I follow them on Twitter. I don't really read a lot of their articles or anything, but from the articles that I do read, they're pretty in depth. I would say that they're probably more critical of right wing, but they are also pretty critical of like things like the New York Times and Washington Post and things like that are generally considered left wing as well.
Nikki, we can't do it on this path, unfortunately, but you know who started and funds Media Matters?
Who?
George Soros. Yeah. All right, Nick, you got anything to say before we wrap up here?
No, I don't have a lot to say. I mean, it's just.
But also, it says David Brock is the founder, so I don't know about all
that. This idea is it would be, again, like I said, I thought it'd be funny if it actually works out. I mean, that would be great. And like you said, it would probably end up being something like a Metacritic, which definitely has its pros and its cons. I mean, its cons being that people change their way their games are around them, and that people basically will give something a 0 on Metacritic without actually playing the game because of something that was advertised that they didn't like. And I'm not going to go into the examples of that.
Well, it's because of fandoms and stuff like that. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. And you would see obviously that exact same thing in the rating of media outlets. I'm sure there would be a way to figure it out that by setting a certain standard. And again, now this is totally just spitballing ideas, but being like, you have to look at the article and you can't rank the article until after 5 minutes passes. So you literally could, if you want to give something a 0 without reading the article, you have to literally just stare at the page for 5 minutes and not read anything.
Put a time gate on it
to deter people from doing that.
Sure.
You put a timer there, the article's in front of you. If you want to choose to not read it and give it a 0, then you make that effort. But I feel like at that point, most people would read the article before ranking it.
Sure.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
yeah.
Hold on, we are at 59 minutes and 45 seconds. So I think we're gonna wrap it up there, and we can talk about it more next week. But I think I'm surprised by the amount of agreement that we had on the podcast. Maybe there is hope for America. Maybe the second Civil War won't happen next year. We'll find out. But thanks for
cliffhanger. But before we start getting too hopeful, I think we should wait until the episode where we talk about the Mueller investigation, and then we'll see how how we progress from there.
Maybe we can do that next week. That'll be fun. I've got quite a bit of money running on the Mueller investigation, so we can talk about that. All right, guys. Well, thank you very much, and everybody have a great week.